And if this turns out to be a dud, that's all right too.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but you're my first guest.
Okay.
So, welcome to the very first episode of Rock Island Line, a community podcast dedicated to the city we love, Rock Island, Illinois. I'm your host, Annika O'Melia, and I hope you join me each week to learn more about the people, places, and ideas that shape Rock Island. For our inaugural episode, I couldn't think of a better guest than Don Wooten. A master storyteller, Don was integral to bringing television programming to the Quad Cities back in the 1950s when color TV was just coming on the scene. Don worked for WHBF TV for nearly 20 years. He served as an Illinois state senator for 2 terms. Don founded WVIK and the Genesius Guild in Rock Island's Lincoln Park. Don was a teacher at Alleman High School. He continues to write a weekly column for the Quad City Times. Don contributed so much to Rock Island, all while enjoying a long and wonderful marriage to his wife Bernadette and raising 5 children in the city he loves to this day. I met Don on a sunny afternoon at his home, a grand old house in Rock Island's Broadway district, where he's lived some 70 years. The place was filled with books, artwork, and photographs, a reflection of a life richly and thoughtfully lived. And now, my conversation with Don Wooten.
I've thought about doing a podcast myself, but the more I think about it, the less I think of it. So I gotten to the point where I'm not too interested in doing a lot of work.
Yeah, well, I'm just so fascinated to get to sit down and talk to you. So I grew up in Rock Island, and as I mentioned, you know, my grandpa Bob and Roald Tweet went to my church, went to St. John's Lutheran Church, and so...
So you know all the reprobates.
Yes, I know all the characters, exactly. Yeah, and I'm starting this podcast. It's about almost a love letter to Rock Island. I just care about this place as a place. And so, you know, as I was thinking about putting the show together, I just had to interview you because you're such an icon in the storytelling of an area. So,
Are we recording yet?
yeah, we're recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know the problem with being an icon is that it's not you. It's not the inner you, it's the public you. And if you've been in the public eye like a cinder, as I have for so many years, you are careful not to mess up that icon. And after a while, you begin to wonder, where's the real me? Is there somebody besides the icon? After all these years, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, but it puts you in an odd situation. In a couple of weeks, there are a couple of people coming over to begin doing a documentary about me, and I can't imagine why. I told them, what is the point? What are you trying to demonstrate? At this point, I am not anxious to be in charge of anything. I told them at first no, and my friend said, "Oh no, you should do this." And I thought, I don't know why, I still don't know why. And it may come to nothing, which will be fine. Yeah, it's, after you've been in the public for so long, it's hard to retreat into a private life. But now, being isolated and living alone in this huge house, I'm very comfortable.
And you're enjoying the solitude and the days being your own?
Well, the odd thing is I've always been a loner. I discovered early on that I'm quite comfortable all by myself. And the odd thing is I've spent such a public life. Well, when I think about it, I think I have encountered people mostly as an audience, either a live audience or one on TV and radio and so on. And I've had very few personal interconnections. My close friends I actually have mostly passed away, and the friends I have left that I see from time to time, you could count on, well, maybe two hands. So it's a period of spiraling down. At 96, I'm not eager to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I keep doing a weekly column because people read it. If they just stopped reading it, I wouldn't have to write it, because writing is not natural for me. I can talk all day, but writing, I just finished a column this morning at 3 a.m.
Wow.
Having started, around 7:30 or 8, with some interruptions. But by the time I got it almost done, I realized, no, a lot of this has to come out and some other stuff has to come in. And when I got it into what I think is an acceptable shape, I was really tired of the whole process.
I bet. Yeah, I think your column is so loved by so many people. And I was reading through an old version of your column where you talked about death. It was a few years ago. You wrote about kind of facing your own mortality this was in 2023. So you would have just turned 94 maybe.
Yeah.
And you were reflecting on a mentor you had in seminary maybe, who said that you can't make sense out of your life until you face your own death or your own mortality. Do you remember that piece you wrote?
That very clearly. We used to have meditation in the morning, and I'm afraid my meditation was, can I just stay awake, try to wake up? Because they would ring that bell at 5 something in the morning, and I was in no shape to meditate or anything. But then we had one in the afternoon about 4:45, and I was awake for that. Father Griffith was our spiritual advisor, and as he stood in front of the class, the light coming through the Venetian blinds touched his hair and made it look green, so we called him Greeny Griffith. But he would always give us something to think about. And when he said that, I thought, yeah, that's right. We're all going to die. Well, how do we deal with that? Because it is impossible to conceive of not being. You can't imagine never being alive. Just it all goes blank. And how do I deal with that? And so I thought about that a lot. And I thought, well, it happens. It's inevitable. Why get excited about it? And then Pope Francis, I think, said something that really resonated. He says, I'm not afraid of death, but I'm a sissy. I just hope it doesn't hurt a lot.
Right.
And I thought, that's it. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Hope it goes easily or quickly. My mother lived to be 80 days past her 94th birthday. And one day she found that she could not breathe while lying down. So she called my sister. She was living with her. And a few hours later, she died in the hospital. Everything just kind of collapsed all at once. And I think that's not a bad way to go. She had congestive heart failure, as I do. And so it'll work itself out one way or another.
Yeah. I'm my whole life, professional life, I've been a therapist. So I, meet with people every week to talk about life and meaning. And I find that people who spend time contemplating and thinking about their own death often lead very meaningful lives. it has a way of maybe focusing attention or helping you to live purposefully. Do you think your younger encounter with really thinking about and meditating on your own mortality is part of what helped you live a life with so much purpose?
Well, once I thought about it and dealt with it, then I forgot about it. I mean, I know, it's just knowledge I have, and I don't dwell on that at all. One day it'll end, and then I won't know anything.
Yeah.
But you do think, I've spent my whole life cramming my head with all kinds of information, useless, important, intriguing, ephemeral, and you think, where does all that go? It just finishes. You can't put it in a box somewhere where others can use it. It's just gone. And that's the tricky thing about self-awareness. Now, there's so many odd things about being self-aware. One of the things I think about, and this is the curse of self-awareness, that we're always looking for answers. We can't live as other creatures do, just getting through the day. And you think a lot about life. What is life? No, we don't know what it is. We don't know where it came from. Some people think that life somehow landed on Earth, but now they're beginning to think that life was here from the very beginning. And there's an interesting book, I think it's called Becoming Earth, how life itself in its earliest forms helps create the ground we stand on. We just don't know.
Yeah.
And trying to figure it out is maybe useless. So how do you spend your time? We talk about the purpose of life and so on, but that is beside the point. If you're looking for the answer to what is life, you can stop right now because you're not going to find it. It is elusive. We know two things about it in particular. One, it wants to preserve itself. The drive to reproduce is the strongest thing in all creatures. And the second thing is how to sustain yourself, how to keep alive. It's kind of a cruel thing when you think about it, that life persists by killing and eating other things. Carrots don't scream, but that doesn't mean they're not alive. So if you're eating plants or animals or whatever, it's all some living substance. And you think, this is not a very pleasant way to organize yourself.
Yeah.
But that's what life is. And then it continually evolves. It's restlessly experimenting with things.
Yeah.
And people who are different, who are, say, transgender, we're really excited about that. I don't know why. There are over 1 million people in this country who are transgender. And if you're not, you have no hope of understanding what that's like.
Yeah.
So just ease off and accept that there's some people that way, as some people are homosexual. It's not their fault. It's not their choice. It's just the way they developed. And you find homosexuality throughout history and through the animal kingdom. So life does what it's going to do, and we cope with it.
I'm really sensing your roots in theology and biology, because I read that you came here from Memphis at 17 as a seminary student, and then ended up getting your degree in biology, and kind of that blending of spirituality and science, and that's really cool.
It happened, I think it was about the 7th. A lot of things happened to me in the 7th grade. But we were doing a Bible study thing, and we got to the passage that mentioned Jesus' brothers and sisters. And the brothers are named. They didn't bother to name the sisters, but they named the brothers. And so I asked the nun, wait a minute, I thought Jesus was an only child. And then I thought, well, it said he's the firstborn, But she said, no, that we don't know. There may have been cousins or something that were just calling. I thought, no, no, no. It says right here, brothers and sisters. And the church is not admitting that, so there's something wrong here. And then later on, we're talking about Joan of Arc. And I said, didn't the bishops condemn her as a heretic? How is she a saint? And I forget what explanation she gave, but I thought bishops make mistakes. The church is not perfect. Mm-hmm. And that gave me a crisis. I thought, I am wholly absorbed in religion. I loved it, the Mass, the rituals, the music, everything. But my reason tells me there's a flaw here. And I don't want to separate myself from the church, but yet I can't deny what my mind is telling me. So I decided then and there, I'll accept the church's teachings, but I'm free to think anything I want. And I've lived with that all my life.
Yeah.
Faith and reason are two different things. If you have faith, you don't look for reason to sustain it, it's not going to happen. But they're two separate things, and they both have their value. So don't diss either one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad is very much like that. And I remember being in high school in the 90s and the issue of gay rights coming up. And I would say a lot of my friends' parents were maybe more homophobic, or I don't know, just didn't speak as highly of people who were gay. And I remember my dad talking about faith and evolution and how, who do we think we are to understand how science evolves and how humans evolve, and that anything that is created in science is somehow like deemed beautiful by God. And I thought that was always interesting and such a different perspective in the 90s than I was getting from school or from friends or hearing in the culture. He kind of married faith and reason, and kind of rooted, those issues in biology. Yeah, so I really appreciate your sentiment. And
well, it's you go through life, I have, in kind of an impulsive way. I remember when I decided to go to the seminary, I'd visited a shrine. We had quite a little complex in our neighborhood, church, rectory, convent, school, and our house was adjacent to the schoolyard. So I was close to the church, and I went over one day, was kneeling at the shrine, praying, thinking, my thoughts are not going heavenward. This is a waste of time. So as I left, I passed by the back door of the convent and saw a nun kneeling there. And I stopped. I was embarrassed that I'd disturbed her. And she said, I was praying to Our Lady that she would move you to become a priest. And I thought, yeah, that's what everybody thinks. So what the heck? I will enter the seminary. So I did. I decided to leave school after my junior year, took some extra courses in the summer, and entered the seminary in the fall of '46.
Yeah.
But once I was there, I realized part of me is going to fight this all my life. I do not want to be at the disposition of a bishop. He can tell me where to go, what to do, and so on. And I value my own agency. So after 2 years, also as a biology major, I had certainly remained celibate, and it was tough, really tough. But I thought sooner or later that drive is going to get me, and better I not be wearing a Roman collar. So I quit the seminary and was ready to go back to Memphis after 2 years. But then the college said, why don't you stay? We'll find a way for you to work your way through. So I stayed at the college. I was still determined, in a sense, to be Father Gresham. I met him in my junior year of high school, He was a science teacher and he directed plays. I thought, well, that's what I can do. I can
Wow.
be a priest and I can teach in a high school, teach science and direct plays, bringing most of my interests together. But then I was not going to be a priest, but I could still teach science and direct plays. But then in my senior year, at the start of the senior year, I think it was Father Marlin, I can't be sure, in the speech department, said they're starting up television for the first time and they're looking for somebody in the production department. Why don't you go down and apply? So I did. And so I was on the team when television first began in this community. I think it was on Halloween in 1946, very appropriate. They televised 4 hours a day, and they had several 15-minute programs. I handled the boom mic, I moved props in and out, but Pat Colbert had a 15-minute program. Her father was head of some company that sold TVs, so I guess they were happy to employ her. And she did a 15-minute show during which she would pantomime 2 records of a British comedian. And on 2 occasions she needed a male voice, so she dragooned me, we both knew each other from theater, to come in and do the brief male lines. And then also in those last 2 years, I was a member of the B-Flats Quartet, which was enormously popular. We sang everywhere and everything. So we appeared on her show. Then in January of 1950, Father Marlin called me again, said KWPC in Muscatine is looking for some weekend help. Why don't you go down and see what they're doing?
And at this time, are you out of college or
No,
are you still
this
in
is
college?
my senior year.
Senior year, okay.
So I went down and they hired me to work weekends. The thing that alarmed me was that everyone in town knew who I was. I'd been on television briefly 3 times. And I thought, what is this TV stuff? And people not only know me, but greet me as if I were a close friend. This is not good. And yet the attraction of television was pretty strong.
Yeah.
When I graduated, I took a full-time job at KWPC, and after 2 years, I decided to move up to the Quad Cities. In the meantime, I had married in November of 1950 and was living in Rock Island, taking a bus back and forth.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I was right. $250 a month. I don't know how we lived on that, but we did.
Yeah.
But then I found there was a priest going down to Muscatine, Father Dingman. He was the principal of the high school. That's an interesting story in itself. But I called him and asked if I could ride back and forth with him. And he said, yes, you drive and I'll read my office. Well, he'd read for 5 minutes and fall asleep. Put Dingman in the car, he'd go to sleep. even if he were driving.
That sounds a little scary.
Even if he were driving.
Yeah.
He later became Bishop of Des Moines, just a wonderful, wonderful guy, a saintly man, devoted to peace and all the good things in life. I really cherished knowing him, and we got to be very close friends. And that was the end of my radio careers. I wanted to get back into television, but I didn't go back to WOC. I went to WHBF because they carried Ed Murrow.
Oh.
And I greatly admired him, just wanted to be on a station that carried him. And I stayed there for almost 20 years.
So why did you choose Rock Island when you were thinking about where to live and raise a family, and after, before you got married or after, why Rock Island?
What makes you think I was thinking?
Okay.
I had gotten to know Bernadette, my wife, at the end of my freshman year. I don't know if you want to hear all these
Oh,
stories.
yeah.
I got word that my younger sister was starring in a play in her senior year in high school to be presented in the auditorium downtown Memphis. I wanted to go see it. It was the last week of the semester. I had finished all my tests. All we had to do in the seminary was sing at a high mass that last Sunday. So I went to see Father Ed O'Connor and asked if I could leave early. And, there was no bar to doing that in the school. And he said, well, why? And when I told him why, he said, that's not a sufficient reason. And I was outraged. I was furious. I couldn't express it. But inwardly, I was seething. And I thought, that's it. I've had it. I'm going to break every rule in this place.
Yeah, you valued your autonomy. I really hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remembered I had met this woman who was 8 or 9 years older than I in an evening class. I'd signed up for 24 hours, and the registrar said, oh, no, that's way too many. 18's the limit. We'll let you take 21. So I had to drop the evening class. And I had met her in those first 2 sessions. And the interesting thing is, the minute I saw her, I don't know why, but I thought, oh, she would make some man a perfect wife. But that wasn't me. I was not involved. But casting about for something outrageous to do, I thought I'll go on a date, but I don't know any girls. And then I remembered her. And I knew she was, I'd seen her in a room with Father Ed O'Connor. He was her spiritual advisor, also head of the seminary. But I called her. Said, would you like to go see Song of the South? Pause. And I thought, oh no. She knows I'm a seminarian. I'm in so much trouble. And to my surprise, she said, yes, why don't you come over for dinner? So I did. I went over to where she and her mother were living in a second-floor apartment. And they fixed dinner while I went in the living room and found she had this classical collection, which is all the stuff I loved.
Wow.
After the dinner, I praised her mother, and she said, oh, no, Bernadette prepared the meal. And I thought, wow, she really is something. We went to the movie, and I don't know why to this day, but sitting there, I suddenly thought, I'll just put my arm around her. I did, and she leaned her head against my shoulder. And I thought, nothing good can come of this.
And at this point, were you still on track to be a priest, or had you dropped that part of it at the point where you connected with her?
Yeah, but the connection was not that strong. I dated a couple other girls in the last 2 years. But when I was packing up to go to Muscatine, I asked her if I could leave a suitcase and a box with her and her mother. She said, fine. So she came over to help me pack. I remember so clearly. I turned away from her and stopped, just stopped. And then, to my surprise, turned around and said, I think we ought to get married. And she said, yes, I think we should.
Wow.
And at that moment, I fell passionately in love with her.
Wow.
Yeah. Such sudden impulse.
Yes.
Those impulses have propelled me throughout my life.
Gosh.
Into television, into theater, into all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you think of something and you go with it.
Like divine intervention, some sort of a feeling that you allowed yourself to trust and to move with.
I was telling a friend of mine who's a good friend who's a theologian. I told him about some of these things in my life. And he said, are you sure God isn't talking to you?
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm not. I just know that somehow these things happen. When I was looking for a house, we had 4 kids and we're living in a 2-bedroom home that Bernadette and her mother had purchased. Her mother remarried, so we took over the home. But with 4 kids and 2 bedrooms, that's not going to work. I was looking for a house, and I came to this one, which was huge.
It's so
And I
lovely.
thought, boy, this is too much. But Mrs. Studahar was living here, and she opened the door. And when she opened the door and I looked in, I thought, I'm going to die in this house.
Oh.
But I couldn't afford it. And I thought, why did I think that? That's crazy, because I can't buy that house. A year later, it was still on the market and had dropped down to where I could just barely afford it. And so I've lived here for almost 70 years now.
Wow. It's a beautiful house. I mean, there's so much life in it, just the books and the artwork and what a great home. Yeah, and it was again that inner knowing that this is the right house for me. This is the right woman for me.
The only time I'm in danger is when I'm in the house, because this is obviously where I will die. I'm safe on the road.
So I told my husband one question I really wanted to ask you was, I've been married for 25 years, and I also met my husband pretty young. And I have a lot of ideas, and I go with a lot of stuff. I'm constantly like, ooh, wouldn't this be cool? And let's do this thing. And you remind me of a person like that, where you did the Genesius Guild. You ran for state senate. You were a teacher. You're such a storyteller. How did your family cope with you having all of these chapters of your life and kind of momentum behind wanting to do things and then making them happen?
Well, that's the sad thing. Advice to women: never marry somebody who's in television, because they're probably going to be working at night. What's the time when a woman can use a man to help with the kids?
Yeah, bath
after
time,
school,
food.
after school to bedtime. I was never here then.
Yeah.
I was never here. I was only home on weekends, and working until 11 o'clock at night. I'd come home. Everyone was asleep. I was wide awake. So I usually would work on scripts and do something until I felt sleepy, and then go to bed around 2 a.m. When I woke up in the morning, the kids were off to school already. So I didn't see them except on weekends. So Bernadette bore the whole job.
Yeah.
And I've carried a guilt about that all my life. But there was nothing I could do. I couldn't afford to miss a paycheck, so I had to keep working. And she was stuck with 5 kids. But they all turned out beautifully.
How did she cope with that? Did she give you a hard time? Did she
No.
take it in stride? And kind of things were so different then with the gender dynamics between men and women. And but
Well,
did she give you a hard time, or she said, go
No,
do
never
the things?
did.
Yeah.
Never did.
Wow.
I didn't realize how tough it was for her until later on. Kids were told me some evenings she would be crying with, the pressure of it all. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Bill Hebert, who was directing marriage and family counseling, was my guest once on radio. And I said, how would you define marriage? And he said, a treaty between nations. And I thought, that's not bad. What I did, I just surrendered right away. I thought, whatever you want to do is what we'll do. She ran the house. She decided what the kids needed, what had to be done, and I followed orders. I did my penance on weekends. I had a book review program Saturday morning. I'd come home and start dusting and vacuuming the whole house, spending the day doing that. In the evening, I'd entertain the kids while she prepared dinner. Then after dinner, I would, I don't know if I helped with the process of going to bed or not. Usually on winter nights, I'd build a fire in the fireplace, and we'd all lounge around here, and I'd put some music on, and we'd all kind of drift away to sleep.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Were they interested in the things you did, your children and your wife? Were they interested, or were they doing their own thing and then you were, having your own adventures and pursuing your interests?
We pretty much let the kids do what they wanted, as long as it was legal, and proper. Uh, we never insisted they do anything. We just let them go outside and play, which was the best thing you could do. They are all solid, responsible citizens now. And I had very little to do with that. Bernadette really shaped them.
Wow.
And they are good. They're really good kids. Well, kids are all retired senior citizens now.
Did any of them kind of follow in your footsteps of being meaningful participants in their communities?
David experimented with being on radio for a while. They got a job at a station in Geneseo, but he was more interested in archival work.
Okay.
And that's pretty much how he spent his life. Each of the kids found their own way.
Yeah.
I was ready to help them with anything. And it amazes me that they kind of knew what they wanted to do, and they did it. And they were all very successful.
And it sounds like your wife greatly shaped them, but that influence, I hear that from you, being this person who's like, I have ideas about what I want to be and what I want to do in the world, and then making those happen. And I'm sure watching your example of that kind of follow through must have been really powerful too.
Well, I certainly tried not to be a negative influence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it was tough for them because their father was on TV.
Yeah.
And everybody knew him.
Yeah.
When David briefly joined the Scouts, the woman in charge kept calling him Don instead of David. I thought, oh, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
And it was not easy that way. But I tried not to mess them up at all. The only time they went down to the station, there's a picture over there of them meeting Captain Kangaroo. I brought them all down to meet him when he was in town.
How fun.
But otherwise, I didn't involve them in my work at all.
Yeah. Was there a moment when so you said you didn't necessarily think, oh, I want to live in Rock Island, but was there a moment when you thought, of the Quad Cities or of the region, Rock Island is for me? I belong here. This is my place.
Well, this is where Bernadette and I started because this is where she lived. We first had an apartment, and then when her mother remarried, we moved into the house. And I've always thought Rock Island, well, I know Rock Island is the best of the Quad Cities. I know that's a contentious thing to say, but the evidence is there in the insurance rates, the efficiency of the city government, and so on. The police department, fire department, the park department are all superb. Mm-hmm. And it's a good place to live. Rock Island has a terrible reputation because of the loony years. And back in those days, boy, the whole Quad Cities was wild.
What years were, because you've had the vantage point of seeing this arc of the Quad Cities and really seeing such a broad overview of Rock Island and the changes. And, can you think of something we've lost over that time and maybe something we've gained? Or
it's hard to explain. The early history of Rock Island and of Davenport are beyond me. It was before I was here. I discovered that Davenport always kind of looked down on Rock Island. And I thought, boy, have you forgotten about Bucktown? That was there were more brothels in Bucktown. And there were plenty in Rock Island, but not nearly like Davenport. Davenport was the big stop on the Mississippi River in those days. But each of the Quad Cities gradually calmed down. I remember talking to Tish Hewitt. We got to be friends, and I complained. I said, why is it Deere has an establishment in every one of the Quad Cities except Rock Island? She said, that's why we moved here. I was aware of that. But there was a great enmity between Moline and Rock Island. And the history of this complex metropolitan area is fascinating. Davenport should be called LeClaire. Moline used to be Rock Island Mills, and they were going to name Rock Island Davenport, but he was crossways with somebody
It ended up being Stevenson before it was Rock
oh
Island.
yeah, but that they wouldn't accept Davenport because he had made an enemy of somebody in the state legislature. So Antoine LeClaire, who was founding a town across the river, decided his friend Davenport should be honored by naming a city after him. So what should have been LeClaire became Davenport. What should have been Davenport became Stevenson, that name pulled out of a hat. Moline should have been Rock Island Mills. It's a complicated story, but it's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of grow together as this Quad City region, but each little city has their own personality and almost their own chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
And if you thought of some adjectives specific to the Rock Island experience, or, what do you think defines the identity of Rock Island?
Rock Island is mostly a place to live. We had for a while some big companies here, a couple of them, but they're gone, and we're not going to get them. I mean, the city keeps trying to do that, but it's not going to work. We're just a place to live, and it's a good place to live. The amenities here are wonderful. The park system especially is just great. But we've gone through some changes, but the golden age was back when Mark Schwiebert was mayor. I thought this city was better run than any I had knowledge of. I asked Mark once, I said, how do you do it? He says, well, we have good people. I said, but I really don't want to say because everybody else would copy us. But he said, we're nonpartisan and we're efficient.
Yeah.
And we have learned to make do with very little, and we do well. So Rock Island is a very comfortable place to live. I remember when I was in the seminary, a few Saturdays to try to make some money, I worked in a home bakery, cleaning pans and so on, rotten job. But I would hear people talking as they came in, and boy, they put Rock Island down something fierce. I thought, boy, what is wrong with that place? And when I moved here, I found there's nothing wrong with this place. It's really
wonderful,
great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
But we still carry that. I remember once in a Greek comedy, I put in a skit, a send-up of TV news. And one of the lines that got the biggest laugh was toward the end of the newscast. The anchor said, remember, in Rock Island, it's a riot. In Davenport, it's a neighborhood disturbance.
And did you notice that was true in your time reporting, that if a story was reported out of Rock Island, it was reported on differently than if it was from, did that ring true to you, having been on?
Anything went wrong in Rock Island, Davenport papers put in headlines.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they had just a wild racial situation over there, it was covered but gently.
Yeah.
It's and there's that competition still. It's we have grown, I think, and have learned to cooperate better, but the tension remains there. It's not as strong as it used to be.
Yeah.
But maybe it's healthy. I don't know.
I mean, and that's kind of the point of this endeavor, is just to kind of celebrate Rock Island. I think we have a little bit of a maybe grittier identity, or it's a place where you don't feel like you have to keep up with the Joneses. Maybe, where you can just, like you said, live and raise your family and afford your home, and maybe don't have to be pushing all the time for more material things, but can enjoy pursuits of life, your passions. I mean, all the things you were able to start in Rock Island, from the Genesius Guild to WVIK, this place where you could be really creative and live a really beautiful life.
I can't explain all that. It's one of the things that mystifies me in my life is when I talk to people who have the means to do things and suggest something that sounds pretty wild, they always say yes. I've never had a turn down on anything I've suggested.
Wow.
And I think, what's wrong with people? I mean,
You're like, I want to start a radio station. And everyone's like, sure, let's do it.
yeah, that's right. The Genesius Guild performing in the park. I mean, it just astounds me.
Yeah.
That permission was always given.
And it's such a human thing. You know, we talked about biology, and you said us creatures are driven by this desire to reproduce and to survive. But art and storytelling and understanding people and self-awareness, these are very uniquely probably human things. And something that has really driven you is this, these artistic kind of culture and society.
Well, it was
the mailman over there.
It was stuff that sounded interesting.
Yeah.
I wanted to act, but working in television, I couldn't. When I was at Muscatine for 2 years, I joined Playcrafters because I came home in the evening. It was a daytime station. And I was involved in a play. And I thought, these people are really good. I want to work with them.
Yeah.
But then I came into TV and I was working nights and I couldn't. To show you how warped my standards were, I worked to get an afternoon shift so I could be free at night to act. And finally I did. And they were going to start with, so I told them I'm available. And the gal who was going to direct the play, Country Girl, I guess that was it. She said, what do you want to play, the director or the actor? I said, I don't care. I just want to be in a play. So they canceled their season. WOC-TV at that time, Channel 5, had offered them a half hour once a month to do a live thing on the TV, and so they canceled their season and did that. But working at Channel 4, I couldn't.
Oh, no.
So out of my frustration, I'd been teaching part-time then, I called together some students and some friends and said, let's form a theater group and just do plays nobody else does.
Yeah.
And that's how the Genesius Guild started. We entered Marshall one-act play competition, which was a big thing in Rock Island for many years. And we won Director's Trophy and second best play. Wow. And the park board director at that time said, we're going to start a Starlight concert series. Would you be interested in doing a play in the park? I said, sure, why not?
I remember those from my childhood, and it was such a,
27, why not?
Yeah.
So I said, where? He said, well, pick a park. So I went looking. I'd never looked beyond that big building in Lincoln Park to the other side. So I went around there and I saw that circle of columns. I thought, Greek play. Mm-hmm. We'll do a Greek play. And as a publicity stunt, we'll do it in mask. A one-time lark that turned out to be the soul of the Genesius Guild.
Oh, and it's so powerful to hear how you had these ideas and that people can just do an idea. There's no rules. There's nobody telling you what to do or saying you have to do it this certain way. You just were moved by ideas and just did them. And how powerful that was over the course of a lifetime.
Well, how do you get that freedom? Yeah. That's the thing that amazes me.
Yeah.
And the park board pretty much let us do whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
And for a while they paid people to work at the Genesius Guild till budget issues kind of pushed that out. When I suggested they give us use of the building, they were storing all their machinery in it. They built the shed down in the parking area, and let us use the building.
Mm-hmm.
So what is this? Why do you say yes so easily? And but it's been going now for well over 60 years. I don't know what its future is. I hope it's solid, as long as they keep doing the Greek play in mask, preferably with the masks that George Woolner designed. Took us 10 years to get that worked out, but they are perfect.
Wow, I wonder if I can track down whoever is doing it now and maybe interview them, because I think these cultural things and institutions give shape to a community. They become synonymous with the place. You know, Rock Island becomes, that's where Genesius Guild is, and that's where, you know, these special things in the community are. And it helps to create the identity of the place that we call home. It's so powerful.
Well, the Genesius Guild will take whatever shape it takes.
Yeah.
It's in pretty good shape financially. We have a $500,000 endowment. Should be $1 million, but $500,000 will do. And as long as we have the support of the Rock Island Park Board, and the public keeps showing up to participate as actors and as audience, might as well keep going. It's a pretty solid establishment.
Yeah, it's such a gift. I mean, it's just a gift to Rock Island. And WVIK is so cool. And I think, did Kai Swanson take over your hour or kind of your show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Kai started with me as an actor in the Genesius Guild, and I realized this guy's got talent. And others have found that out along the way, and so he's had a very good career. But VIK came about because of financial straits. When I entered the politics, and that was a result of an impulse.
You just one day were like, I think I'll run for senator. And you did
No.
it, and then you won, and you were like, oh, shoot, now I have to be a senator.
It wasn't quite that way. I had become the director of public affairs, was doing Spectrum at issue, several radio programs. I was actually working 7 days a week. And the weather show was enormously popular. Never understood that, but don't argue with it. And my book show one Saturday after Martin Luther King was assassinated. I talked about him, that he was just 2 months older than I. He died in the hospital I was born in, and I felt he was a reproach to me. He stayed down south and fought the good fight, and I left, came up north. I suggested books and magazines about him. And we had a new general manager who had replaced the one that really gave me the freedom to do anything I wanted on television. Called me into his office the following Monday, and he was very upset that I'd talked about Martin Luther King. He didn't like the man. He was a racist. And I thought, what is this? You know, I was not accustomed to this, a manager trying to censor what I was doing. And finally he said the magic phrase, what makes you think people want to hear what you have to say? And I thought, I'm leaving. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I will not work for this man any longer. And it took me a while because there were business opportunities, but I was not interested in that. And finally I thought, they ought to replace the state senator we have, so why not run for politics? So over a period of several weeks, I thought about it, talked to some friends, and decided to take the plunge. That's how I got into politics.
Do you remember what Bernadette said when you said, honey, I think I might run for Senate?
I had a family meeting. I called the family all together, sat around the dining room table, and said, I'm thinking about running for the Illinois Senate. And they all said, no way. I thought, this is going to be tough. My family won't support it. Will anybody else?
Yeah, your son's holding a sign. Don't vote for him.
But they went along with it, and it was very successful. So that was another impulse. All one impulse, one sudden thought after another.
And trusting it.
But for WVIK, when I was in the Senate, I had to be out of work for a year. Couldn't be on radio or TV. So that was going to be a tough year, but I owed the whole world $5,000, so I thought I can tough it out. Then after 7 years in the Senate, almost 8, I took stock and realized my debts now amount to $22,000, and I don't see how I'm going to pay them because any job I take would constitute a conflict of interest. And I told my secretary, Emily, in June of 71, no, 79, no, 77, okay, I'll get it straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, what I ought to do is talk Augustana into turning their little 10-watt sandbox they have for their students into a honking big NPR station. Then I said that again and again and again. And by December, when I brought it up again, she said, look, either do it or shut up about it. I was startled, so I picked up the phone, called Tom Treadway, the new president of Augustana, asked to see him, suggested that, and in 5 minutes he said, if you can find a way to do it, do it.
Wow.
Just like that. Took 3 years, but signed on the air 2 months ahead of the election, and what was going to be a part-time job became a full-time job.
Yeah. I just watched a YouTube video of your colleagues giving you a birthday cake on your 90th birthday, and you were in the studio recording, and yeah, kind of getting ready for this. I mean, what an institution that it has become. Yeah.
At WVIK, I thought the perfect combination is classical music and news. The news people will lure into the classics fans will lure into the news, and it worked like a charm. And at least for the time that I was managing it, because I paid very close attention to how the classical music was scheduled. There's an art and a science to that. I went to a meeting one time on NPR. They had these year-end things that we'd meet and talk. I went to a session about audiences, and they showed one graph after another of NPR stations. They would go up in the morning, go down through the day, come up in the evening, and out. And said, so news is the thing. I said, do you have WVIK's schedule there? Said, yeah, we should. So I said, why don't you put it up? He put it up. We went up in the morning, stayed up all day, and went down at night.
Wow.
He said, well, that's an anomaly. I said, no, it's knowing how to program classical music.
Mm-hmm.
So since that time, WVIK is split into 2 parts. Unfortunately, the classical music is on a low-power station where it's hard to pick up. And you don't have that mixture anymore. But, you know, life is what it is.
Yeah.
I think it makes economic sense to just ride the NPR network.
Yeah.
So
and you've probably seen a lot of transitions like that when you said the companies like International Harvester that left and maybe they're not coming back, and the way that technology has changed how we listen to radio or how we, absorb art or...
Well, we go into podcasts, we go into all sorts of different things, but the basic thing is radio.
Yeah.
Radio has been pronounced dead so many times from the advent of movies, the news, the TV, the social media and everything, and still it persists. Newspapers are having a tougher time, but thank God they still survive.
Yeah. And really part of the most powerful part of a modern newspaper is the editorial section, because so many newspapers are being kind of bought by bigger newspapers and they feed the same stories. And so the editorials that come from local people are so powerful.
Well, the death of local newspapers has benefited the New York Times.
Yeah.
It has never been more popular or more successful, because if you can't get national news in a reading form, where you live, best thing to do is to at least get the Sunday New York Times, which I do, and then you know you're covering everything. Uh, I also subscribe to The Economist from England, which is probably the very best conservative news source, and they cover the world. And then The Guardian, which is Britain's liberal publication, I get that too. And I found that subscribing to literary journals, the Times Literary Review, the London Review of Books, the New York Review of Books, and the New York book section, not only do they keep me abreast of what is being published in books, but they also run significant articles, especially the New York Review of Books. They do some really good political reporting and social reporting. And so I read those faithfully every week. This place is flooded with magazines.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I tend to listen to a lot, which is maybe why I was interested in doing this, because I listen to certain programs every week to try to fill my brain with all the facts and the figures and takes on, what's going on. I read a little bit. I read the paper, like the local paper and the New York Times, and but I find that I listen because I can be doing laundry or I'm driving to an appointment, or it helps you like absorb without having to sit down and be still. Reading time I have 4 little kids. It feels precious.
The problem is all these things have been poisoned by propaganda, and you have to be of critical mind to judge what you're reading and what you're hearing. You have to have a broad base of information so you can quickly sift out the junk, because I can't explain how people believe the stuff that they see on the internet.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I think there was an article today that it must have been like the Department of Health put out a big report, and they'd used AI technology to write the report, which a lot of people do. They'll put in, to AI, help me write this thing. And it had created fake articles as citations for what was going to shape this health policy for children. And it was like no one in the government had looked at it with a critical eye or thought to fact check the articles that the AI was generating. And so I think, to your point, for our kids and, being able to look at content and understand how to do like a little search to make sure that what you're reading is actually a fact and not a made up citation. I mean, that's like the critical thinking for my kids' generation.
And it's important to have a good basis to bother with history. We're trying to sanitize the history of this country by kind of overlooking slavery and things like that.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't. You should never look away from the brutal truth. I think the last lynching down south was, I don't want to make a mistake here. I think it was as late as 1980. But when I was a kid in the 30s, lynchings were common. And the cruelty that constituted life down south was breathtaking.
Yeah.
I remember Greenwood, Mississippi is where my Aunt Rose lived, and I'd go there every summer. And I was astounded to realize that some of the established people in town had done unspeakable things to blacks. And even when I was in high school, I'd hear of a bunch of high school kids taking a black kid they didn't like, kidnapping him, taking him out in the woods and castrating him.
Wow.
And I thought, you can't look past that stuff.
Yeah.
You can't pretend it didn't happen. That doesn't mean that we can't go forward from that, but it's important to know what you're going forward from.
Yeah.
There's some pretty sordid things in our history. Don't overlook them. We're just human. There was a time when slavery was as ordinary as home life, but that's gone. We've moved past that. And I hope that we'll continue to evolve into a more perfect union where we don't care whether our citizens are black or white or brown or yellow isn't important. If they commit themselves to a country of laws, then they can be as different as they want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As long as your difference doesn't harm another person, then let diversity bloom.
Yeah, one of the people I want to interview, I asked him, he agreed, is my high school civics teacher, Mr. Meyer, Rick Meyer. I don't know if you ever met him in your journeys, but I remember him so clearly saying, "My fist ends where your nose begins." And it sounds like that's a little bit of the philosophy is, all sorts of people can live together. There can be peace and goodwill, and the thing that a government or a city or a society is there to hold a container around is the respecting one another's rights for property or life, or and when we get into all this stuff around race or identity or mandating how people have to be, how they have to act, what the color of their skin is, that we start to
well, good luck to that.
Yeah.
There are times when I'm very optimistic and times I'm very pessimistic about this. But I think back in history how society has evolved as well as people have. And it used to be that people identified themselves by family and clan and tribe and then nation and so on. Some of those are natural, some are artificial. But we limit ourselves, and in doing that, we exclude others.
Yeah.
And when you exclude others, you diminish them. And when you diminish them, it's easy to kill them.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate thing. But I've noticed over my lifetime, people are much more individual now. They are not as tightly social as they used to be. They don't identify themselves as part of a society. That's the herd instinct. And the herd instinct is that, if somebody comes in and doesn't smell like the herd, they're an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
To get past that is a hard, hard thing.
Yeah.
Because although we are self-aware and capable of reason, too often we use our reason to justify basic instincts.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about self-awareness is it gives you the possibility to rise above that. But if you don't take advantage of that, you're just in a herd.
Well, and I think there's something called proprioception, which is that we're constantly scanning for safety.
Yeah.
And if you think about a group of 7th graders and it's like, oh, if you wear this hair bow in your hair, you're safe. And if you look different, it could be such a stupid little thing that we're constantly scanning for exactly what you're talking about, that herd mentality of where do I find safety? What beliefs do I have to adopt? What's the dominant group? If I'm in this other group, am I less safe? And yeah, to your point, like it takes a lot of self-awareness and kind of understanding your own values to maybe break with that or stand up for, like you talking about Martin Luther King Jr. on the radio. That would have, inside it would have been like, is this safe? Should I do this? Should I not? And maybe that's part of the gift of your spontaneity or even that impulsiveness, is just to speak truthfully without thinking through how it might affect your safety. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, but that's a lot of people are worried about staying safe because
yeah.
all of a sudden violence is permitted.
Yeah.
It's lawlessness is not as negative a thing as we used to think, and that is unfortunate. But we've been fed that through the years. I remember going to westerns where it was always one guy would come in and straighten things out rather than the local sheriff. So we picked up that mentality, and guns were just part of the accoutrement that you had. And then you look at games, video games, and movies and shows, the violence is unending.
Have you ever struggled with speaking your mind, saying what your truth is, with all the editorials you've written and being out in the public and taking positions or having opinions about things? Did you ever say, oh, should I say this, or did you wrestle with any of that, or have you always been pretty
Oh, yeah.
grounded within yourself of...
The thing is, I don't want to come off as an extremist. Sometimes extremism is right, sometimes it's wrong. But I look for a balanced approach, or a calm approach, but try to tell the truth. And sometimes it gets you in trouble, sometimes it doesn't. But, if you go through life always looking over your shoulder, that's not a very comfortable posture. You can't see where you're going. I have been on television and radio and in politics, so along the way, for reasons that I don't comprehend, I've collected people who really hate me. I think, why? You don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know anything about me. Why'd you decide you hate me?
Yeah.
You may disagree with some of my opinions, but that's no basis for hatred. So I'm accustomed to that. When I would get a letter to the editor blasting me in the newspaper, I thought, good. That just shows the editor somebody reads it. Who cares?
They're paying attention.
Yeah, they're paying attention, and so it's worth publishing. But, you can't let that wear you down. The thing is, when people approach you, in a high state of anger, you just try to bring it down a bit. I have been close friends with people who are diametrically opposed to me in politics and so on, and yet we connect as human beings.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, and I think that's why community or even local storytelling is so important, because I had a thing with a guy I went to high school with on the internet where we were at odds with each other, and I kind of got rid of all that social media stuff because I found it wasn't a healthy way to communicate with people about differences. And then, a couple years later, my kid and his kid are like best friends in elementary school. And so, when you're in a community and you have to look at people and be with them, and you're not just having conflict on the internet, but you're having it in real life, it changes the nature of conflict. You can see past an opinion to the human being that exists behind an opinion. Yeah. And that's a good thing.
Well, it would be nice. And I think, when we want peace.
Yeah.
The thing to do is create an island of peace where you are.
I love that.
Whenever you contact people, do it in a peaceful manner. And especially if you have a problem with a person, have lunch with them.
Yeah.
That'll diffuse things quicker than anything.
Yeah. Connect eyeballs.
Yeah. Once you break bread with somebody, you are in a relationship that really doesn't naturally admit of anger and conflict.
Yeah. If you thought about archetypes, like you have the mother, you have the father, you have, a doctor, what would be an archetype of who you've been in the Rock Island community? Would storyteller fit? Teacher.
I've been a teacher more than anything. That's what I set out to be. And for 20 years, I taught part-time at Alleman. And there is that magisterial aspect of almost everything I've done. When I was in the Senate, I was anxious to let people know what was really happening. Obviously, on radio, you're definitely trying to tell people what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes me kind of tedious because I'm always trying to teach. And maybe you don't want to take a lesson today, so back off.
In teaching, what did you think the part of you that was teaching, that was wanting to convey something, wanting people to understand something. Is there any theme in there of what you hoped they took away from their time in your classroom,
You never know. A couple of times I've been overjoyed to find that, it didn't have an effect. And there are several, we can go on to anecdotes all day long, but you just have to have confidence that if I'm doing the best I can, that this is going to work. Teaching is the hardest thing I've ever done. I found that having a classroom of about 20 people, trying not only to engage them with the subject matter, but to get them to think about it, that is the be-all and end-all of teaching, to get kids to think. One last example, when I'd been teaching at Alleman for a while, I figured this is it. I'm burnt out. So I told Father John O'Connor, the principal, I quit. I've had it. I can't do this anymore. He said, "You can't quit." I said, "I just did." He said, "No, what'll it take to keep you?" I said, give me your brightest students. Let me teach them anything I want. No tests. Give them all A's. Maybe have them write an essay at the end of the semester. Yeah, I'd do that and I'd stay. He said, "What'll we call it?" And that's how the humanities class came to be.
Wow.
It was the most joyful year of my life. The kids were anxious to get there, and so was I.
Wow. Wow.
And we dealt with all kinds of issues openly, plainly, and honestly.
Yeah. Another example of you being like, let's do this, and someone just opening the door and saying,
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
It only lasted a year, but what a year it was.
Yeah, and isn't that amazing that type of education is probably the most powerful, where you have young, bright minds coming together and looking at real world problems and talking about how to solve them. And I think that's like the be all end all for education.
Yeah.
My oldest is a freshman in high school, and I love picking her up from school because I just watch all these kids pour out of Rocky, and it's so beautiful. But then I think education is hard because they're having to take so many tests, and they have to show that they're proficient in different things. And I would love it if she had a class like that where
you're going to have to edit this.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody is still listening if you get all this in one string.
No, this is how podcasts are now. It's long form. People go on for hours and hours. So we can wrap up whenever you want to, but
I think we ought to wrap up.
Yeah, that's totally good with me. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you sitting down with me. You're kind of an inspiration for how to live a good life here in Rock Island.
That's that's nice of you to say so, but
Yeah.
I don't think you can prove it.
Well, can I look at my notebook and just make sure I had written a few things down? Can I see if I forgot any of my main questions?
Okay.
Let me see.
We covered way too much.
Yes, but it was wonderful. Okay, two things.
Yeah.
If Rock Island had a heartbeat, where would you hear it?
If what?
If Rock Island had a heartbeat, where would you hear it?
Where would you find it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a diffuse heartbeat. You would find it in the park department. You'd find it in the police department. You'd find it in the Broadway district and any neighborhood where people kind of coalesce and get along. But I don't think it's a single heartbeat. It's just a sense that this is a good place to live.
I really like that. And as I embark on this adventure of trying to tell stories and communicate with people and hopefully have some good conversations, any advice for me?
Listen, that's one thing I learned early on. In the early days of television, they decided to do a man on the street program. So they pushed a big camera, they were huge in those days, on the third floor and aimed it down across the street in front of the Rock Island Bank. And they strung a wire across for the microphone. And they sent me out there in the afternoon to flag people down and talk. Well, in the middle of the afternoon in Rock Island, how many people are going to be walking down the street? You'd be lucky to get a couple. So when somebody came up, I'd engage them and talk to them. And as we talked, I'd listen for a key as to where we'd go next. And just keep listening and keep extending the conversation and inviting them on to do more until I saw another person come down the street. Then I'd gracefully end the conversation and collar another person. But if you don't listen, you run out of steam right away.
How did I do?
You did fine.
Okay.
But I'm an easy subject because it's hard. It's easy to get me to talk, but it's hard to get me to shut up.
And you have a great radio voice. You have a future in this. I don't know. No.
Oh, I know I've got a past, but I think the future is going to be considerably subdued.
Yeah. Gosh, I just so appreciate you. I'm so honored that you're going to be the first guest on the podcast, and also just taking a moment to appreciate your friend Rolled Tweet, who had the Rock Island Lines.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm doing a play on that, and so just the storytellers of our community and how just incredibly valuable and powerful.
I've known some really great people in my lifetime, made friends with the architect Ed Anger, Lowell Dorman, who came to work for WVIK, students of mine from that humanities class. One of them was my doctor, Alex Paregas, then Mark Boljohn.
Oh, his daughter is my doctor. So, yeah.
And Steve Spring. I shouldn't go naming people because in the Genesius Guild, there were dozens of them.
Yeah.
Really good people I got to know and admire. And it's the people you know who enrich your life. And my life has been very rich that way. Even though I'm a loner, I've had an awful lot of company.
Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end it, and I just so appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we did it.
I don't know how you're going to edit that, but you can cut out huge sections.
We won't need to edit it. Thank you for listening to the very first episode of Rock Island Line. If you like what you heard today and want to check out more, go to rockislandline.com. Not only do we have a podcast, but we're setting up a physical space in downtown Rock Island where we might hold events, and there are articles on the website and also different sets of facts. And so I'm just getting started here, but if you're patient, that site will grow and we'll do more interesting and fun things there. So check us out at rockislandline.com. Also, you can check out the show notes for information about Don Wooten, a little more of his biography, and links to some of the cool things that he is doing and has done in the community. Hope you have an awesome day, and check back here next week for a new episode.